that stiff arm that he threw on Josh Norman, I don't know if it ended his career. I just know that we haven't seen him since. I don't know.
He's out there. We see him, but we don't hear him speak.
Josh Norman's what, 6'1"?
I don't know.
Probably 210.
Yeah, he did something to him. And there was a guy last year.
Put him in the corner.
That epic 99-yard run.
Oh, my gosh.
He stepped on some dude from Jacksonville.
I think Josh Norman got more hang time. I think he got a better score from the Russian judge on that one. He could have won a long jump competition.
I really did.
It was unbelievable. Coming to you live from the Softfleet Studios in beautiful Hillsborough, North Carolina. I'm your host, Clintonian Webb. I am joined by Mr. Merald, the Commish Holloway, and Mr. Dominic, the Dom Battistella. And also on the ones and twos, our boy Dre. And this is the Joe Schmo Sports Show. We're just regular guys that know just enough about sports to have this show. So now that's out of the way. What's going on, fellas? How are you?
Pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you, fellas.
2021 is here.
Yeah. Dom?
Good.
Yeah, I'm definitely over 2020. Glad
Yeah.
2021's here. We're ready for Week 17 of football, and ready to get into the playoffs, man.
Yeah, your boys you don't really have a big game today. You've already clinched, but you can clinch number one.
No, we can clinch the number 2 seed in the AFC by beating Miami, knock them out of the playoffs, hopefully. I always like a good opportunity to secure the seed and knock Miami out anytime I can.
Yeah,
That's an old 90s rivalry right there.
Crushing people's dreams. I love it.
Exactly.
Mr. Dre, how's things with you, sir?
Everything's going good with me, man. Thanks.
Yeah, we had a rough night last night, Sans here in this area. But today, we are not here to talk about college football or local sports. We are here to talk fantasy football. So we have a couple experts in the room. Mr. Merald Holloway, as I already said, he has been a friend of mine for 2 decades and some change. And he has been my fantasy football commissioner for just wrapped up our 18th year. And so he's the man behind the curtain when it comes to the fantasy football. And so we have the Commish's view on things today. And Mr. Dom over here is the analytical wizard of the group, has a very methodical way in which he drafts his teams. Fair warning, he did not play fantasy football this year. So he is coming from a complete unbiased perspective today. Okay, so what we are going to do today, fellas, as I said before we started this show, we can start anywhere. We can go anywhere you want to, direction-wise, when it comes to this show. But let's start off with some fantasy studs. All right, let's start with quarterback. All right, so quarterback. So the first overall quarterback that was drafted was obviously Mr. Patrick Mahomes. Okay, and he did not disappoint this year, although he did not finish the QB1 overall. So any guesses on who finished QB1?
Oh, I got to guess. I know.
Merald?
Aaron Rodgers?
Nope. Mr. Dom?
Oh.
My boy Blue over here.
Okay.
Yeah, Josh Allen.
Nope. All right.
Well, maybe in your league, man, but in the standard league.
So you're talking standard league?
I'm talking
here?
four points per passing touchdown.
We're not talking ESPN. Sorry, I'm talking Yahoo because that's where all of our leagues
Okay.
are. So I guess I should have clarified that. Sorry.
Who finished first?
Kyler Murray.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
we're finished with 518.5 points.
Wow.
Okay. 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. So not great.
He had a bunch of runs, right?
3,884 yards in the air.
Yeah.
And he had 816 rushing yards. And as Dom just said, 11 rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So overall, and that had to be, you had an extra 80 points right there just on the rushing yards, or 81 just on the rushing yards in standard scoring. 1 point per 10 yards, 6 points per passing touchdown, 6 points per receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
And 1 point PPR leagues is what we're talking about here, guys.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. How in the Yahoo scoring league or the Yahoo scoring system that you're using, that's 6 points per passing touchdown, and how many points per passing yard?
1 point for every 25 yards passing.
So how does Kyler Murray finish ahead of Josh Allen when Josh Allen has him by 8 passing touchdowns and 500 yards passing, and he's only losing 40 yards on rushing touchdowns, and total non-passing touchdowns, he's only down by 3 because he has a receiving touchdown as well.
I have Josh Allen at 418 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns.
That's correct.
Okay. And I have him at 4320 for passing yards.
Yep.
34 and 9 is what I have written down here. In the Yahoo scoring in the app, it's Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and Mr. Unlimited himself, Russell Wilson.
Interesting.
That is the top 5 in scoring.
Oh, you know what it may be?
But that's the tier.
There may be some bonuses in there.
Oh,
that
there's
are
definitely
unaccounted
bonuses for 40-point play, 40-yard plays, stuff like that. This is pretty standard scoring stuff for Yahoo.
Okay.
The difference between Allen and Murray in standards.
What we have here, we have 518.46 for Murray, 510.80 for Patrick, 510.45 for Josh Allen.
Okay.
So Josh Allen is only down by 8 points total. Now, there are some fantasy leagues that are still going right now. And so Josh Allen could very well sneak into that number 1 spot.
He's not playing much today.
But exactly. So what they were saying is Miami needs to lose today. Is that what you were saying, Dom? Or you're playing Miami?
So Buffalo and Miami are playing.
Okay.
If Miami wins, I think they're in the playoffs.
Okay.
If Buffalo wins, Buffalo secures the number 2 overall seed, and Miami's out.
Okay.
Buffalo secures the number 2 seed if they win or if Pittsburgh loses.
So if the Steelers, because you know Big Ben's not playing.
Yeah.
So Mason Rudolph is starting at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh.
That's a concession right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
So if Josh Allen, let's say as a Bills fan, if Josh Allen was playing in the first half, you look up, because you start the same time that Pittsburgh starts. If you look up and see that Pittsburgh's down by 3 touchdowns at halftime, do you pull Josh Allen?
Probably.
Even if you're losing or it's close?
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you wrap up that number 2 seed with a win or a Steelers loss.
Because they're trying to avoid playing Kansas City.
I would hope so.
As early as they can.
Yeah,
so.
Well, I mean, you would avoid that if you're the number 2 or the number 3 seed
That's
anyway.
true.
But they're trying not to go to Pittsburgh. They're trying to have Pittsburgh come to Buffalo in January, and the weather's going to be a little bit different in Buffalo, but so is the environment because Buffalo now 6,500 fans can come to the game too. So there's going to be a little bit of a table smash and mustard pouring and all that other stuff that those crazy people up there do.
I really want to go to a tailgate up there, man. I've never been. It's on the list.
You want to die?
Yes, I do. I love going into stadiums that I have no stake in, man, and just like having a good time because you got to just get wrapped up in the atmosphere and the culture of everything. Am I saying that I would jump off of the top of a truck onto a table? I can't promise I won't, but it's not in the plans.
But you might eat 1 or 2 chicken wings, is what you're saying.
Oh, one or 2 dozen, and along with 1 or 2 dozen Paps, probably.
Pap. Look, you got to get a Labatt's or a Molson up there.
With the Labatt's. I'm good with the Labatt's. I love me some Labatt's. Since you didn't play fantasy football and Dre didn't play fantasy football this year, Merald, did you have any of these top 5?
I did. I actually had Allen in 2 leagues. I had Rodgers in a league. I had Kyler Murray in Hoofnagel, a league that we've talked a lot, spent a lot of time, and it was helpful to have Murray this year because I also had Christian McCaffrey as a keeper. So
we'll get to
I needed those extra things. So it looks like to me, to like your original question, Clint, is we're talking about studs, right? There seems like there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys add more. There's 4 or 5 guys in like that top tier.
Oh yeah,
Allen's definitely there.
Definitely.
Rodgers,
100%.
Unbelievable. People slept on him this year.
Correct.
Picked him up. I think about Kiasha, who picked him up like the 9th round or 10th round, something like that.
Yeah.
Murray, Mahomes. Anybody else belong in that place?
I mean, you can throw Watson, who finished 6th. You can throw him in the mix.
Is Lamar Jackson still in that top tier?
This is what I want. I wanted to talk about that. Yeah. We actually will when it comes to fantasy duds, and I don't really know if I want to. I don't think so, but we can talk about it. Okay. There's an argument to be made. Because
he was overdrafted.
Well, he was over. So a dud, just in the essence of where he was drafted, as he was the number 2, more than likely the second quarterback taken.
So overall, and I'm talking across the analytics for all leagues for 2020, Lamar was drafted at the top of the 3rd round.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the 37th overall pick.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
That's insane.
Mahomes was taken, not that.
Well, no, of course not. But Lamar finished as he would be a third-round pick. He finished the 28th overall
player,
according to value player in the NFL. And I'm talking about points versus replacement. And I'll get into that when we talk about how I draft my fantasy football teams. But he would have been a third-round pick if you drafted based upon how fantasy points finished off this season. If you look, and normally that doesn't happen with quarterbacks. Normally quarterbacks don't even fall into the top 10 when it comes to value, but you had 4 this year, surprisingly, in the top 10. And this is based upon 4 points per passing touchdown leagues. You had Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers was being drafted, I believe, in the 3rd round overall. Josh Allen was being drafted in the middle of the 2nd round.
Wow.
And the reason he was being drafted in the middle of the 2nd round is because of his rushing statistics.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And even this year, even though his overall rushing yards have come down dramatically, he's still accounting for 9 additional non-passing touchdowns.
He's being a better game manager.
There's that, but he's also rushed for 8 touchdowns. That's 6 points per. He caught 1. And then, of course, his completion yards.
Let's not overlook why that's come on.
Speaking of studs.
Right. So we'll get to wide receivers in a few minutes, but he has a better supporting cast, and no doubt. And that goes all the way down to Cole Beasley.
And he's throwing the ball to his teammates this year.
Yeah.
So Dominic and I have actually talked about this before at his house. Josh Allen is, actually, I think we talked about this on the phone the other day. I think he's number 1 in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Number 1 in the NFL in completion percentage outside the pocket. If I'm not mistaken.
So there's completion percentage outside the pocket. He's number 1 in yards and completion percentage outside the numbers.
Okay.
That's the other thing, right? You can throw a 20-yard pass down the seam, and almost any competent NFL quarterback can do that. But can you throw it 20 yards down the field and 45 yards to the sideline?
To a spot.
To a spot, right?
Oh,
exactly.
He's a stud.
Nobody can do, and who else can do that? Patrick Mahomes can do it, but who else can do it consistently in the wind whipping off of the Great Lakes?
Oh yeah, no doubt.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, no doubt. I completely agree with you. Josh Allen, I wish he was on my team, but
you don't have too bad a quarterback situation in Texas.
I had Deshaun Watson on my 2 teams that I've played this year, and he didn't disappoint me. Even when Will Fuller went out, the dude threw for 300 and some odd yards, and because he had some questionable supporting cast, except for David Johnson, who was super duper solid all year, and Brandon Cooks, who was a bit of a, I don't know if I can call him a disappointment, but I expected more for what we gave away. So
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Billups. That's something that we don't need to do. But I want to say Russell Wilson, he was the QB1 after 6 weeks.
Oh yeah,
and it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close.
What happened there?
This dude had 24 touchdowns or 25 touchdowns after week 5. And so, after week 6. He had 3 5-touchdown games in the first 5 weeks of the year.
Oh, he was killing it.
And that also speaks to some of the duds that we'll get to later. One of his receivers, who will be named later, was on my team, was the number 6 overall wide receiver for a good portion of the year, and then was the number 48 for the rest of the year. But then you had DK Metcalf, who was also a stud, and we'll talk about him in a few minutes.
Yeah.
All right, but I don't know what happened to Russ. I think that
he started playing quality defenses a little bit more.
See, and that's the thing. So that Russell Wilson was the worst quarterback against pressure in the NFL this year. The worst. And you're talking about
worse than old man Brady?
You're talking about you got to give Brady some credit, Merald. There's no way to explain it, because what they were saying is he should have torched the Washington defense just because of who Russell Wilson is. Now Washington has a good defense this year,
their defensive line is legit.
That is why he had a problem.
Chase Young,
because the predator. You can't get away from pass rush, and apparently their offensive line isn't good enough to withstand that kind of pressure. Because I don't remember he was the GOAT for the first 6 weeks, guys.
Oh, I thought he was going to throw for
traded him. Yeah, I was traded for him.
Yeah.
I think part of what happened is defenses got wise to the fact that they don't have much of an offensive line and they're not running the football. We're just going to line up and pin our ears back. We don't have to worry about filling gaps. We just need to rush this guy. Yeah.
And their defense wasn't good enough to stop anybody consistently.
It hasn't been for years, right?
So all you have to do, since Sherman left and they got rid of Earl and all those other folks.
Yeah.
So
it all fell apart a few years ago when they decided to throw the ball instead of run the ball.
Yeah, well, Chris Carson's a very viable option. It's not like they don't have the opportunity to run the ball.
Yep.
But all right, so then we got Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who year after year after year does nothing but put up numbers. And he puts up numbers, and he puts up numbers in frigid temperatures and in all kinds of weather conditions. So as you were just saying about Josh Allen,
spins that ball, man,
who has some ridiculous weather to deal with on a consistent basis, Aaron Rodgers says the same thing. He doesn't have the wind, I think, necessarily that they have in Buffalo coming off that lake.
There's another lake there.
Yeah.
Some wind there.
But I'm going to sit here and tell you, both of them are in this top 5 because they both have a very legit, dominant number 1 wide receiver. Okay? And so Aaron Rodgers is historical for passing for 18 for 22 for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this dude doesn't need to pass for 300 yards to be a fantasy viable option. So, Merald, since you were the beneficiary out of a lot of those touchdowns, I don't know if you ever sat him this year. I can't imagine.
I did. I actually had Allen and Rodgers on our lucky. So another league, Lucky 13, because nobody liked Rodgers. I got him late. So I switched them out when the matchup made sense.
Okay,
and I rarely screwed up.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you pull out your phone?
Yeah.
Can you tell me if there was any week that you ever did not make the right decision? Because that is such an agonizing decision. So it's not the same thing. So don't think I'm saying that. Mm-hmm. But during the first 2 weeks of the fantasy playoffs, I was like, do I start Deshaun Watson or Kirk Cousins? Only because of the matchup. So Deshaun Watson had Chicago and Kirk Cousins had Detroit. But it's one of those things, and we talked about this, Merald, on that day. Mm-hmm. Could I be okay with losing with Deshaun Watson on my bench if I could have won?
Yeah.
And I couldn't.
I don't think you can.
But am I okay with losing with Kirk Cousins on my bench having more points than Watson? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because Watson is what got me there.
I don't think it ever. I'm sitting here looking at my phone. I don't think there are weeks where Allen outplayed Rodgers.
Well, they're 3 and 4 in the fantasy rankings.
But my team was so nice. Like there's 1 week. Week 2, I played Rodgers instead of Allen.
Yeah,
and he had 4 touchdowns.
Who, Allen or Rodgers?
Josh Allen had 415 pass yards, 4 touchdowns. He just killed it. Had almost 50 fantasy points.
You didn't lose, though?
No, I didn't lose.
Okay, that's all that really matters.
I scored 215 points for it. Because I had McCaffrey actually played.
Yeah.
I had Mostert. I had Kelsey. I had Diggs. I had D-Hop. I had DJ Moore, who only had 4 good games all year, but that was one of them.
Dominic, this is a 10-team league that he's talking about.
So it's nasty. So.
Yeah, that team was ridiculous, man. I don't know how you didn't win.
Everybody must have had a nasty team in a 10-team.
There's some terrible.
There were like 4 good teams.
Yeah. And then 4 mediocre teams
make the playoffs in this.
Yeah, 4 mediocre teams and 2 really bad teams.
Well, if you look at week 2, Rodgers didn't have a bad game.
Terrible.
No,
I mean, they won 42-21 over Detroit. So it's Detroit. They just didn't need him. They ran the ball. He passed for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, interceptions in that game. He had a 107.6 quarterback rating, which is one of his lowest of the year, but they still scored 42 points.
Is that when Aaron Jones went for 184 or something like that?
I don't remember those numbers.
Because I think that...
I will say, I did want to ask, did you play Rodgers or Allen in week 6, and how did that turn out for you?
Let's see, week 6, I played Allen instead.
Oh, it was lucky because that was hands down Rodgers' worst game of the year. You're talking about 160 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, quarterback rating of 35.4.
Right.
That's crazy.
All right, so
I got lucky that week because I played one of the poor teams, and the Chicago defense was playing really well at that time. And they beat the Panthers, and I have Travis Kelce, so that makes up for a lot.
How do you have Rodgers and Allen
you have to
and
realize,
Kelce?
The stock on Rodgers was way down going to a lot of drafts, so people weren't drafting him. So he basically was a backup because nobody wanted him. Everybody's so focused on these top tier guys.
Patrick Mahomes,
Lamar Jackson, blah, blah, blah. People really were in. There was all this stuff in the offseason about we drafted Jordan Love and we're going to make time for him and blah, blah, blah.
So, Rodgers was still being drafted in the 5th round.
In our league, it wasn't.
Because when it's only 10 teams, people felt like I'll just go somewhere else. And then I was able to get him as a backup. It's crazy.
So in that game, that Rodgers did not have his best game, but had a really good game that you were just talking about.
Week 2, yeah.
Aaron Jones had 18 rushes for 168 and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
He had 8 targets, 4 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. So he had 52.2 fantasy points. And that is a week that I lost. Okay? So anyway. All right, let's see. Patrick Mahomes. We'll save the usual best for last. Okay, so guys, I don't know what can be said about this kid that hasn't already been said. His commercials are great. I'll say that. I love those State Farm commercials. Those they make me laugh, and he's good in front of the camera. This kid is just so charismatic. He carries himself so well, and the stuff that he does on the field, the way that he's able to read the football field and the way he's able to direct his receivers is pretty impressive because he doesn't have to do much with Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have to do much with Travis Kelce. He just says, go get in a spot. I'll find you. Mm-hmm. But these other guys, these McCole Hardmans and DeMarcus Robinson and even Sammy Watkins to a certain degree, they need to be helped along. But his composure on the field, and he's already a champion, guys. He's already an MVP. He's already a Super Bowl MVP. He did, however, finish second. So it's not a disappointing year for any reason in fantasy football.
Yeah.
But
they try to run the ball a little bit more this year, a little bit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the duds. I'll tell you that right now.
And he throws. Sometimes he does make a couple questionable throws there because he's so good.
Yeah.
I remember being in high school and early couple of years of college and like watching Brett Favre. And like Brett Favre was so awesome. He had this apex where he was just like unstoppable. But because of that confidence, because he was so good, he's like, I can fit this ball in anywhere. And he would just do dumb stuff.
Doesn't he lead the NFL history in interceptions thrown?
He probably are.
But he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right. Oh,
goodness, yeah. If he would have never gone to the Jets.
But Mahomes, man, I'm sitting there, I'm watching.
How many players could you say that about them? Or played for the Jets? They just had an outstanding
all of them
career.
After Curtis Martin.
Yeah, Curtis Martin is the only one.
He's the last one.
Curtis Martin.
I don't know if he's the only one because you have Joe Namath, right?
Yeah.
He's not the only one for sure, but he's definitely the last one.
Right.
I don't know if anybody else would say that they were proud to be a JETS.
But the only person I can think of that, like, when I think positively about their whole career at the Jets is, what's the cornerback?
Darrelle Revis?
Yeah, oh my God.
You couldn't throw on him, but Mark Sanchez was his quarterback.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, the only person I can think of, oh man, that guy, Curtis Martin, like you said, Darrelle Revis. There's definitely no quarterbacks. Even though growing up as a kid, I'm telling my age of Kenny O'Brien.
Oh, yeah,
I was like watching the Jets.
Namath, for sure.
The best Jets quarterback of my lifetime was Chad Pennington.
Dude, I will never forget this, you guys.
He was Alex Smith before Alex Smith.
Right. I will never forget this. It was one of the most painful injuries I've ever seen in my life when Chad Pennington went down. And it essentially ended his career. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I think they were playing the Bills. If I'm not mistaken, they were playing the Bills. It was in New Jersey. And he got sacked from the back. And he went down. He caught himself like this. Well, he had the ball like this. He caught himself like this with his hand, and his fingers just went like all the way back. And that was his throwing hand. Essentially, that's really going to end your career. He had a couple of years after that, after he got rehabbed and stuff. But really, to begin with, he was Chad Pennington.
Yeah.
So they have a run of those. They're the same exact quarterback. The Chad Penningtons, the Mark Sanchez's. Who played for them back in the day that could really sling it? Vinny Del Negro? No, that's
oh my gosh.
Sorry, this is not the basketball show. My apologies. But Vinny Testaverde used to sling it too.
He did. He was 40 years old.
Right, but
and that was like a big deal back then. Like, he's 40.
Man. It was, and now look at
he was like 48 when he came to play for Carolina?
That's Carolina's MO, though. It seems to be. Now you got people like Brady that are going to be playing until he's 50.
Oh, God,
so Merald's a huge. We'll get to that later. Okay.
Hey, let me put in real quick.
Please.
You were right. It was against the Bills.
Okay.
That he got injured on.
So before we move on from quarterbacks, anything else you guys want to touch on at all as far as quarterbacks go?
Oh, we haven't talked about Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. These are just the top 5 that we're going over.
Okay.
And if you want to throw in somebody that you think should have been in the top 5, then perfectly okay. Justin Herbert was not top 5, but he is definitely going to be talked about later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't think of a quarterback that people expected to be good that wasn't serviceable.
Anything else you wanted to say about the 5 we've mentioned so far?
No, nothing too much further. I would say that the quarterback that fell the furthest from his draft position to final position is probably Lamar Jackson.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't even think that's close.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, so let's move on. Wide receivers or running backs? Which one do you guys want?
Oh, do you want to talk about other quarterbacks first? On to the other
no, we're just doing
top 5.
Yeah, top 5. We can talk about everything else later. Running backs.
Our stats this year.
So number 1 overall with a bullet, strictly because of Championship Fantasy Week number 16, would be Mr. Alvin Kamara himself. Moly. Okay, so he went from number 3 running back to the number 1 running back.
Off of one game.
Ridiculous. Okay. You get 6 touchdowns and 155 rushing yards. It's going to catapult you quite a few spaces.
Poor people who had to play against him last week.
That's 40.
50. No, it was 64 points.
64 total
64
points.
Total points.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, this isn't the scoring system, but in standard scoring, he's 45 points above Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, it's probably pretty close.
But that 45 point, it didn't come from that one game. Yeah, he scored that much in one game, he was averaging.
Sure. He was with
being the number 1 running back over the course of the entire year.
Right.
That's in PPR leagues.
Yeah, right. Even with a kind of those questionable weeks when Taysom Hill took over. Where he just was useless, or Latavius Murray was stealing touchdowns, or Taysom Hill was stealing touchdowns.
Is Taysom Hill the future in New Orleans? I can't see him.
I don't see it
taking over for Drew Brees. I mean, Drew Brees has got maybe one more year or two.
It's not Jameis Winston. They better draft somebody.
Oh God, no. Yeah, they've got to do something, but it's not Taysom Hill.
I think the wide receivers are like, it can't be Taysom Hill. Like Michael Thomas is like, hey, when I get healthy, he cannot be a starting quarterback.
No.
I need my numbers.
It cannot be Taysom Hill.
But they've invested a lot of money in this guy, and watching those games, I was like, yo, what is this? I felt like I was watching like...
You're going to pay him and not Teddy Bridgewater?
Southern Durham play Hillside or something. I was like, what is this offense? What is going on here with this mess?
So, being the number 1 running back.
Yeah. Kamara.
Stats are 187 carries.
Okay.
932 rushing yards for the number 1 running back in the NFL.
Okay.
16 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then he added 756 receiving yards on 87 catches.
Yeah.
And 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. No, he's a beast.
It's the touchdowns where he's really getting it.
Right.
I mean, because if you look at overall yards,
right.
Dalvin Cook's got him.
Derrick Henry has everybody in that.
I'm talking about total yards, rushing. Right.
Totally.
So Derrick Henry does not catch the football.
He can't.
No,
he
cannot. But see,
imagine if he could. Though.
Right.
Oh my God.
Holy moly.
So, do you remember? Think back to weeks 12 and 13 when Drew Brees got hurt.
Yep.
Went out and Taysom Hill started for New Orleans.
So
before they figured it out, Kamara had 13 and 9.
Yeah.
In back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
So essentially, he's the number 1 running back with 2 weeks off. Because Taysom Hill did not target him at all. Right. He had 1 catch the entire time and 2 targets that when Taysom Hill was the quarterback those first 2 weeks.
Taysom Hill can throw a comeback. That's about all he can do. And if the tight end is like flares out, he can do that. He can make it. Other than that, he's worthless. Like, he's a stud. The dude is built like a Greek god.
Yeah.
And as a little gadget guy, I love him. But as a starting quarterback, he hurt.
He's a right-handed, more athletic Tim Tebow, is what he is.
Oh,
he can't throw the ball,
right.
Really.
Not far.
And not well.
Yeah, not well.
And that was the problem with Taysom. Okay, so Kamara was just won a lot of people the fantasy championship because
if you made it to championship week with Kamara, you won that game.
This is every fantasy.
I'd love to hear the story of the person who got to the Super Bowl, had Kamara and lost.
So
you don't hear that story because that didn't happen.
I almost did it. I wasn't in the Super Bowl, but I almost did it. If I would have started Myles Gaskin instead of Mike Davis, I would have beat Kamara in Week 16. Yeah, but
That's a bad beat, man.
You must have nothing else on your team at that point.
But everybody screwed you.
So with Kamara though, so this guy, you wake up on fantasy football championship day, you're already excited. You're like, I want to win this money. I want to.
Oh, speaking of some money.
Oh yeah, won the regular season.
Champ.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that too. So you wake up on fantasy football championship Sunday as a fantasy player. You've put your brain power and your time and your emotions into 15 weeks to be in this position. And you look at your lineup and you have Kamara. And you're like, okay, he's slated to get, let's just call it 20 points, 22 points, something like that in a standard scoring PPR league. And then you have the updates on your phone, and every 5 minutes, Kamara touchdown, Kamara touchdown, Kamara touchdown. I didn't have Kamara, and so I can't speak on how that feels. Any like fantasy memories of you guys that you have of something that happened to you like that on a championship week in fantasy? Because I know you have a fantasy football title, don't you, Dominic?
Oh, yeah.
So I have 3 fantasy football titles. Merald has more than...
Maybe like 6.
Merald's got a lot. And
they all came a long time ago. It's been a long time since I won.
Typically
2014 is the last time I won.
So you're the Notre Dame of fantasy football?
Well, not that bad. They have no chance. That's another topic. They have no chance of winning anybody's championship ever. Boy. They started letting Jim Bob and Pookie into the school. But that's just not working. You got to get them big country boys that can't read. And some cats from Miami, South Dade High.
So I'll just say, like,
that's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, always in the championship game.
I'm gonna quote Merald here.
0.
I'm gonna quote Merald here.
It's a wrap.
When he used to talk about Carolina basketball. We need some bras.
Real ones.
That's what Merald used to say. We need some bras on this team. And so what you're saying is Notre Dame needs some bras.
And some gems.
And some of those corn-fed. They all been going to Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. All right.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
we go back to fantasy football. We were talking about running backs, and we were talking about how great Kamara is. What happened to the 1,000-yard rusher? There's 5. That's it. You've got Henry at almost 1,800 yards.
A lot.
You've got Dalvin Cook at 1,557. You got 3 that haven't even cracked 1,100, and then after that, nobody.
Right.
Yeah,
5.
Right.
Yeah.
A bunch of committees.
Well, I think workload is one because you don't have the LTs and stuff like that you used to, the 35 carries, 30 carries, stuff like that. Derrick Henry is that.
Right.
He got 32 carries a couple weeks ago.
They're not people that are built like that.
But no, there's not people that are built like that anymore. Plus, I think that introduction of the receiving back has really taken over because there's more value in that. There's more value in a running back that can catch it.
Like, give them 10, 15 touches instead of 30.
Like CMC and Mike Davis.
Look at the committee is where
of course.
It really hurts. You look at Cleveland, they've got one of the top offensive lines, the top running games in the entire league, but they're splitting that work between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Yeah. And those guys are both top 10, but neither one of them is going to get to 1,000. Yeah.
So that way you don't have to pay them. I mean, I think this has a lot to do with the running back has been devalued. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm Minnesota, I know we'll maybe talk about this another time, but like Dalvin Cook, great running back, but a little gimpy.
Yeah. Sure.
And he's coming up for a contract extension. Saquon Barkley, I'm a Giants fan. Love him.
Yeah, man.
I don't want to sign him. You don't need to. I would never spend money on running back.
But it seems like it's the easiest position to replace.
It's
down to get somebody in the 5th round. Yeah, and just
you have 3 that are coming out of the ACC, just the ACC that I can think of right off the top of my head that could be first round picks that you can replace that with. You got Michael Carter, you got Javonte Williams, and you got Travis Etienne.
Yeah,
just right there you can replace that guy.
Run him to day 4 years.
But see, Minnesota didn't pay AP when he came up on his contract. They paid him once. They paid him once.
Paid him once, but that's it.
Yep, I get that.
I don't blame.
Yeah, they take too much wear and tear. But can we talk about, speaking of ACC running backs, can we talk about the fantasy resiliency of one Giovanni Bernard?
Oh, oh man.
He wasn't even being drafted in the 13th round. He's the 26th.
He was only drafted in PPR
fantasy
leagues. Yeah.
Yeah, but still.
Absolutely. And
or as an emergency number 2 running back.
And he'll get you 20 points.
Yeah.
Because he'll catch the ball 8 times.
And there's a chance that he's going to crack
sneak a touchdown.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I've seen it happen.
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
That punt return he had against NC State was one of my favorite things in the history of the world.
I fell in love with him in that game.
Oh, man. And the call by Jones Angel. Epic
Yes.
stuff. Okay, so talking about committees. So looking at the top 5 list. So the top 5 list goes as such. Dalvin Cook. Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Kamara.
Committee light with Latavius Murray.
Sure.
I don't think you can really call that a true committee. There was a point in time during the season that Latavius was probably getting 30% of the carries, 35% of the carries.
Latavius does have 656
I know, this is what I'm saying. How many carries does he have? How many carries does he have?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, because Kamara has 187. So
he
you can find out.
became Mark Ingram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and we'll talk about him too. All right. So you got so you got Alvin Kamara, committee-ish. I guess he had 187 carries. If Latavius had 100 carries, you can call him
committee.
Yeah. Okay. So then you have second on that list is Dalvin Cook. Let's just be honest. There's no committee there. No. Alexander Mattison is serviceable when he was in there.
One start where people started him.
And then he shit the bed.
He really did.
And then you have Mike Boone, I think, is the next guy up. And he was actually pretty good for the half. And then, again, he wasn't fantasy relevant at all. So
he lost somebody last year.
If you're not starting any other running backs from Minnesota.
No, not at all. All right, so then third is Derrick Henry. So no committee there. Yeah. Okay, but Kamara, let's go back to him real quick, not 1,000 yards. Okay, not 1,000 yards.
Didn't need it.
All right, so he was the number 1 back in a committee. Number 1. Dalvin Cook, no committee, number 2 back, 1,555 yards. Or 57 yards. Derrick Henry, no committee, had 1,777 yards.
I hope he gets 2,000 today. We'll see.
And dude, he only had 19 catches for 114 yards. So as we touched on a little while ago,
that's not catchable.
All right. So then you got the number 4 overall running back.
I love this one.
Undrafted free agent James Robinson.
Okay.
And James Robinson, 100% not a committee. Dude had 240 carries, which is third behind Henry and Dalvin Cook.
So
he got hurt
last week.
Okay.
He didn't play last week.
So he was undrafted across all of fantasy football. He was drafted 9th overall in the 3rd round.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was not drafted in Hoofnagel for sure.
No, he was not.
But what I was saying is he was undrafted out of college. He is the first undrafted free agent to have 1,000 yards.
Probably makes $10 an hour.
Dude, I'm sitting here telling you.
Yeah. Got a really favorable contract.
Oh, he's getting ready to make some money though, because they did not shy away from using him. There was no split in this committee. There was no anything.
And they need a strong running back to support Trevor Lawrence next year.
And he was just so fun to watch. So freaking fun to watch.
Are they going to take... Well,
wait a minute.
Yes.
You actually watch Jacksonville games?
I
don't have enough time in my life to be watching bad football.
Let me tell you something funny now. I was sitting there watching watching football on a Sunday, talking to Merald. This was probably about 4 weeks ago. We were sitting there texting. And I said, you know what my favorite part about fantasy football is this year? Is waking up knowing that in the league that really matters to both of us, right? The one that we want to win the most, and it's pretty consensus, that I don't have to worry about who I start at my running back position because I had Aaron Jones, who is a surefire. If you sit him, then
he's legit.
You better have Henry, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and James Robinson.
Sure, you had the number 4 and number 5 in fantasy football.
And so earlier in the season,
you're sitting pretty.
And earlier in the season, I had Josh Jacobs. There was 3 weeks that I didn't start James Robinson because I had to start. Because if you have Josh Jacobs, you got to start Josh Jacobs.
At least the first couple of weeks.
Because this dude gets 30 carries a game.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you have Josh, you got to start Josh. But I was 0-3. And then I made a trade. I traded Josh Jacobs for Tyler Lockett. And then started not having the question of who do I sit today, James Robinson or Josh Jacobs. Instead of having to do that, I woke up with the confidence. And I just had the 2 in my starting lineup because we didn't have a flex position. It's 2 running backs.
Was that the league you had Mike Davis as well?
No.
Okay.
The league I had Mike Davis is the league he had CMC. So,
that had to hurt.
But having 2 of the top 5 is a good feeling to wake up to every fantasy.
I had to patchwork those lineups.
Yeah, I know, Merald. But you still.
My team was still
nasty. Let's go ahead and talk about James Robinson since we're down to James Robinson, and then we'll skip back up to Derrick Henry. Okay. So we'll actually save Derrick Henry for last because that's fun. All right. So James Robinson, as I said, undrafted rookie. Where was he out of? Dom, can you tell me where he went to college?
Give me a second.
I can't even. I honestly can't even remember where he went to college.
I never heard of
Illinois
Texas,
State.
El Paso.
Illinois State.
Illinois State. Okay.
Okay.
No, that's Darren Jones. I'm sorry.
Okay, Illinois State. Okay, so undrafted out of Illinois State. That's got to be a Division II school.
What city is Illinois State in?
I'm gonna guess that it's in Springfield. That would be my guess.
It doesn't say.
Because it's a state college, and that's the
Yeah.
capital. So you would think that because Chicago has so many universities.
Yeah.
It might be. It might
Might
just
be.
be another one of those. But this kid
Where is it? Yeah,
does not get any kind of recognition coming out in the draft.
Oh, he's meat and potatoes.
I don't even remember them talking about him in the combine.
Yep.
And then he just comes out and then just starts running the ball, and they just keep giving it to him and giving it to him. And he just
Yeah.
keeps producing.
Yeah.
And so you have somebody that, as I was saying, I had trouble starting. So what do you do in that position, Merald? What do you do if you have somebody that you know is going to get 25 to 30 carries in Josh Jacobs, and somebody that is proven, and somebody that is going to get probably about the same, that is unproven, and he's a rookie, and he plays for Jacksonville?
Yeah, it depends on who they're playing. I always look at matchups, no matter who I have. Even if I don't play around with the studs. So like the known studs, I play on.
So the
no
Christian,
matter what. No matter if the
absolutely,
matchup
for
is
sure.
terrible. But somebody like James Robinson, until he proves himself, I'm just gonna look at the matchup and say who's he playing, who's my other guy that I got going.
But what did I do? What did I
Offensive
do
line.
after I started James Robinson?
Oh man, you had a crazy hot streak, man.
10 in a row.
Crazy hot streak because you could count on volume.
Yes.
Which is all 9 times out of 10 is going to
Yep, targets and opportunities. Targets and opportunities, man. So
Yep.
James Robinson had the targets. Let's look at his stats. He finished at 301. Let's just call it 302 fantasy points. Okay, and this is again full point PPR.
How many-
He had 1,070 rushing yards with 7 touchdowns on 240 carries.
Okay.
And he had 49 catches for 344 and 3.
Okay.
So it's respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a good
Number
year.
4.
So out of everybody on this list,
He was Fournette.
okay, out of everybody on this list, so you have Dalvin Cook had 44 catches for 361 and 1, and he's perceived as a better receiving back than James Robinson.
There's still something about him where I just don't want to draft him.
Who, Dalvin Cook?
I don't think I ever wanted to
That's
draft him.
Kiasha's boy. We'll let him have him.
It's
So-
the
I don't trust that knee.
I know, I get it.
Yeah.
In the ACC, like he might be. I was sitting there thinking about. We were having this conversation one day, I think, in our group chat. Like, how many really great running backs has the ACC produced? Like Hall of Fame ACC running backs. There aren't really any good ones. There aren't any great Hall of Fame running backs from the ACC.
Was Don McCauley or Amos Lawrence, are they in the Hall of Fame for any reason?
Mm-mm.
Because those would be the two that came to mind.
Like the best we could have is Tiki Barber.
Tiki out of Virginia.
Yeah.
Are we talking recent history? Because I mean,
All
it's
history.
good.
Go back 30, 40 years. Who's the best ACC running back?
Well,
ever?
okay, so you're not
Yeah,
counting.
yeah.
So you're wanting them to be in the True Justice.
Yeah, don't go down.
And they would have had to have been in the ACC when they played for that team.
100%.
Okay.
There aren't any.
Yeah.
Warwick Dunn?
You can scratch Duke off.
Yeah,
Warwick
Warwick
Dunn
Dunn
was good though.
You're in the Hall of Fame.
But-
No, he
Hall
wasn't
of
a Hall of Fame.
Famer.
Tiki's probably in the Hall
We
of
don't
Famer.
produce Hall of Fame running backs.
Is Tiki a Hall of Famer?
No.
Will he be?
No.
Too many fumbles.
Didn't do anything.
Won a Super Bowl.
No, he didn't.
No, I thought he did.
Mm-mm.
It was Super Bowl.
He left.
No, he left
the year
He
before.
left the year
Oh,
before.
that's right. I forgot about
Took
that.
it to them 19, 18 and 0.
He did
So
that.
Dalvin Cook is he the best ACC running back? And he's still not going to play that long. He's going to be like Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles be really great for a few
man.
years. The dude, I saw this thing yesterday. Jamal Charles is 34 years old.
Yeah,
he just
sure.
turned 34.
Wow.
He's been washed for 10 years.
10?
I mean, I'm not that long.
Well,
I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
But think about it. I mean, we don't produce running backs.
No.
Not Hall
Where
of
did Jamal
Famers.
Charles play?
I don't know, like Texas or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. He played in Texas. No, I can't
But
think of
that's
it.
Dalvin Cook, beast, really great.
It would have to be Dalvin Cook
But in
at this point.
2023, people were like, "What happened to Dalvin Cook? You remember him?"
I hope not.
I guarantee that's what's gonna happen.
I didn't like him in college. We'll see.
We just don't produce running backs. It's
No.
funny. I was
Yeah.
sitting there thinking, I was like, man, we don't have a great ACC running back in my lifetime that I can
Meanwhile,
remember that went to the NFL and just killed it.
The last one, the one that was supposed to be great was C.J. Spiller.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
well,
Frauds.
meanwhile, on
Yeah.
Alabama's roster a couple years ago, you had T.J. Yeldon, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, and Alvin Kamara all on the Alabama roster at one
Yeah.
point in time in
Crazy.
history.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah. That's just not the ACC. I don't even know. What do we know? What's the ACC known for? Like, what do we produce? Offensive linemen or something?
Carolina produces offensive linemen, defensive linemen.
Tight ends.
Yeah, tight ends. Wide receivers.
Defensive linemen for
sure.
Defensive
linemen. Yeah. And I don't really. And you wouldn't say quarterbacks either because Matt Schaub, Charlie Ward, Chris Weinke, Mitch Trubisky. Hey, look, we can talk about him too.
All right. Hey, quick note. Yeah. Illinois State is in Normal.
They're FCS Division I. They are in the Missouri.
What were James Robinson's stats in his senior year? Anybody want to find those? We'll come back to it in a little bit. All right, because we're still on running back. So let's go to Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones is Mr. Consistency. Right? As far as this dude's going to get you 20 points a game in fantasy.
I'm super surprised that he did well because there was no way you could expect him to repeat what he did in 2019.
He didn't repeat necessarily, but he didn't disappoint.
But he didn't disappoint.
He was the running back 3 last year.
I stayed away from him because I was like, there's no way that he's going to have all the touchdowns again.
Well, with Jamal Williams, you wouldn't think so because Jamal Williams hawked some of those. Jamal Williams had a damn good year. I think Jamal Williams finished probably just outside the running back 2 position, so you're talking somewhere in between the 25 and 36 range or something like that. And he was a very serviceable. Aaron Jones went down for a few weeks, and because Aaron Jones played... I don't know. I think he played 14 weeks.
He did? Okay. I just get nervous when somebody has an unbelievable year like that out of the blue.
Sure.
And then I'm like, I can't draft him the next year.
Green Bay has that. You have an advantage being a Green Bay running back because you have Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Or go back to Amon Green. He wasn't the best running back, but the Batman had Brett Favre to protect him. And then you had, Sterling Shepard and...
Who was that guy who just caught touchdowns?
Yeah.
He used to wear the hoodie.
The white guy, Jordy Nelson?
No, he was a beast too. And people slept on him. But no, there was a guy who was a wide receiver
Merald.
for Green Bay, and he wore a hoodie.
I know, man, and I can't think of this to save my life.
But he caught
touchdown after touchdown.
I'm sorry, keep on going on these tangents.
So,
James, by the way, James Robinson, senior year at Illinois State, 1,899 yards, 126.6 yards per game, 18 rushing touchdowns.
Wow. What did he have? Did it say receiving stats there? 1,900 yards on the ground. Wow. In college,
he had a 297-yard game against Southeastern Missouri.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Undrafted, huh?
They're not looking at FCS schools. There's so many good players that are coming out of the FCS.
So the question is, did he get invited or go to the combine?
I'm sure he did.
Because
you're getting beyond my research skills.
Yeah. No,
I'm sure he did.
I'm just wondering because
we'll just pick him out later.
Yeah, I mean, because FCS, it is what it is. Now, there's some Hall of Famers that have come from FCS schools. Jerry Rice came from an FCS school. Terrell Owens came from an FCS school. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet, I don't think. But
T.O.?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Is he?
Okay.
So
he's the second best receiver of all time. First.
Yeah. Randy Moss says he's second. Jerry Rice is third.
Hey, he's up there. Those.
What can you say about Randy Moss?
I love T.O., man.
I love all 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
So Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, T.O., I love all those guys. All right, let's just leave Aaron Jones. He Mr. Consistency, 1,062 yards, 8 touchdowns, 43 catches, 312 for 2.
Yeah.
Just solid. He's not going to lose you a game. He'll win you plenty. He's not going to lose you a game. He's an every week start. Plug him in your lineup. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
How many championship squads do you think had David Montgomery?
Oh gosh,
in the starting lineup?
Oh, bet a few.
You know, he was running back 6 on the year.
Right.
Yeah.
He had a huge surge the last 4 or 5 weeks, right?
They played Houston.
Yeah.
So everybody has a huge surge when they play Houston.
But he just looked like a different guy.
Yeah. Trubisky came back after whatever they've tried quarterback-wise this year. When Mitch Trubisky came back, it looked like he actually had a better grasp on the offense.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like he was spreading the ball around more. They let him actually run more, which I think opened up the David Montgomery situation because David Montgomery, man, over the last couple weeks of the fantasy season, it was unbelievable. Dude had, I think, 4 or 5 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, it was unbelievable. All right, so now let's talk about the Yeti himself, the beast among all of these running backs, Derrick Henry. Okay, so we were having this conversation with Kiasha in the studio last week. Drea and I were. I'm not saying anything. Obviously, I don't know anything. Nobody's told me anything. There's no speculation. But this dude seems to have the Barry Bonds syndrome, where he gets bigger and bigger every time you see him on TV. And I was telling Kiasha, I wonder what his shoe size was.
I want to know what his helmet size is.
From when he left college to now. Because I've never seen a bigger human being on the skill position side of, there's not a tight end that you can say that's bigger than Derrick Henry that I can think of. Would be
Shannon wasn't that big.
But
he reminds me of Christian Okoye.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just
right.
A linebacker playing running back. Smash right into it.
It's the height, too. He's 6'3".
Yeah.
I remember, what's the guy who played for the Giants? Brandon Jacobs.
Oh, gosh.
Big
Boy.
dude like that.
That was your boy in Madden.
Yeah. But he was nothing like Derrick Henry.
No, so Derrick Henry, so let's just do the stats real quick because this is the easy
arms,
part.
These classic stiff arms that he has.
Ask my boy Josh.
So we're going to talk about that in 1 second. So Derrick Henry, 410 fantasy points. He had 344 carries, which is astronomical in today's football, which we just talked
Titans
about.
are getting all of that investment. They're like,
17,
we spent a lot of money on this guy.
1777.
Yeah.
That's how many yards he has so far. There's one game left. 15 touchdowns. And as we said, 19 catches, 114 yards, and 0 touchdowns. If this guy could learn how to catch the freaking football.
Yeah, Barney Rubble hands, man.
It
what happened.
It would be absolutely the most ridiculous thing anybody's ever seen on a football field.
Could you imagine having to try and tackle him?
No,
DB on a wheel route,
dude. So look, it's when you those are the times on a football field when you make business decisions. Derrick Henry coming at you, and you're in open field, and you are tasked with tackling Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
it's a thing that you don't want to have to do. And what I was saying last week is, if Ray Lewis is running at you and Derrick Henry running at you, I'd still rather get hit by Derrick Henry, but I don't want to get hit by either one of those guys.
Right.
They're the same. They look the same, except Ray Lewis is probably 3 inches shorter than Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And this dude, I don't know what it is, but he can't be stopped. That stiff arm that he threw on Josh Norman, I don't know if it ended his career. I just know that we haven't seen him since. I don't know. Dom watches Buffalo football, so Dom, do we have Josh Norman sightings?
He's out there, but
is he?
What we haven't done is we haven't heard from Josh. We see him, but we don't hear him speak.
Well, it's just like, to me, State beat Carolina in basketball last week, and you're not hearing a lot from State fans, and it's the same kind of thing for me. You can't talk if you get pushed. Sorry, if you get thrown like that, because a couple of years ago we beat State by 50-something. And so you can't really have a conversation after that. You're not even in the same conversation. It's like Derrick Henry and Josh Norman. Josh Norman's what, 6'1"?
I don't know.
Probably 210.
Yeah, he did something to him. And there was a guy last year.
Put him in the corner.
That epic 99-yard run.
Oh my gosh.
He stiff-armed some dude from Jacksonville.
It looked very similar.
Right.
I think Josh Norman got more hang time.
Yeah.
I think he got a better score from the Russian judge on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to tackle that guy low. You got to go in with your shoulder
at the ankles
and hit him at the ankles.
And that way, if you miss, nobody thinks the less of you.
Yeah.
But people definitely think the less of you if you get thrown 7 yards. He could have won a long jump competition.
I wouldn't have done it.
It was unbelievable.
I liken him to Eddie George.
Oh yeah, okay. It's also the same team, Dre.
More upright. High knees,
but he's just bigger.
He's bigger.
Eddie was big.
Eddie George was every bit of 225.
Well,
Eddie was when you're that tall. It's like Eric Dickerson. Like,
yes,
when you're that tall. Well, see, it just stands out when you're taller than the linebackers.
Eddie was great.
Yeah,
Eddie was fantastic. Yeah, he's a Hall of Fame running back.
They ran him to death.
Yeah, they did.
8-9 years. They ran him to death.
They certainly did. And 344 carries. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
So before we sign off here, fellas, we would be remiss if we did not say this before we got off the air. Go to rate and review us.
Yes.
You could go to Schmo Sports at Twitter and at Instagram and on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Download, subscribe, listen to us
on Apple,
on iTunes,
Spotify,
Stitcher,
Google.
You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Click that little bell. You'll see every time we have a new episode.
Click the bell. Turn on the notifications so you're notified anytime we post any new content there. Our social media handles are Schmo Sports. Everywhere you find us.
JSCHMO Sports.
We are also on the web at www.joeschmosportshow.com where you can find all of our information as well as our web blog.
Yeah, so just make sure you rate, subscribe, review. All right, fellas, I guess that'll wrap it up for today. Again, thank you guys for coming. It's been a great pleasure having the Commish, Merald Holloway. And until next time, folks, we are the Schmos. We'll see you.
Cut to the theme music.